the morning after, the night before. The Monaco Grand Prix was yesterday, but the F1 news cycle does never, ever sleep. We need to talk about it, man. We need to talk about Carlos Sainz. We need to talk about the broadcast and some of their foibles and inequities yesterday at the Monaco Grand Prix. And we need to talk Lewis Hamilton. There are so many things kicking off. Esteban Ocon and ramifications. Let's get into it. Listen, first and foremost, let me address some of the rumour and speculation around the broadcast, because I was led astray. You heard me talking about how boring this Monaco Grand Prix, and it was boring. There was not a lot of racing. K-Mag and that first lap incident took a lot of the mystique out of the Grand Prix, and that was sad for millions and millions of F1 fans around the world. However, there was a story in there untold on the internationally syndicated broadcast. Here's what I did. I like to go back and watch and listen to different broadcasts. I went away and listened to the Italian one towards the end of the Grand Prix, and the ability that commentator had to bring the Charles Leclerc narrative to life. He spoke about Charles Leclerc's deceased dad, some of the troubles that Charles Leclerc had in kicking off his motorsport career. He spoke about the lie that he told to his dying father about signing for Ferrari, the promises that he had made to his father before he died about winning the Monaco Grand Prix. How is that not therefore evocative? How can that story not bring a bloody tear to your eye if indeed you are an F1 fan? And that's the story that was missed out by the legend, that is, a man who I am very fond of in David Croft, the play-by-play guy for Sky Sports F1. Now, correct me if you heard it, but towards the closing stages of that Grand Prix, Crofty sounded a tad tired, right? He didn't deliver the coup de grace, the ending, the crescendo of the Monaco Grand Prix in that way. Now, I'm just coming off the back of a chat with my guy, legend of F1, one of the goatiest broadcasters who have ever goated, Peter D. Windsor, and he told me in earnest, when you see that chat, you will understand better the narrative that I am trying to talk about here. It's incredible from Charles Leclerc that he managed to get over that hump, that the Monaco curse has now been slayed. No longer does Charles Leclerc, as a peddler and a man, as a human being, need to deal with this sword of Damocles over his neck. He can be free, much like Lando Norris in his maiden victory the other weekend. Now Charles Leclerc can blossom and bloom and become the peddler that we all know and hope he can be. Now Cameron F1 has to shut his mouth about modern day journalism, right? Hopefully Charles Leclerc can continue to deliver and expedite for his learning curve in the same way that we saw over the course of the Monaco Grand Prix weekend. Footnote, interesting one for you. McLaren was the quickest car. Oscar Piastri, had he connected all of the dots and done his best sectors in one lap and one lap alone, Oscar Piastri, the Australian, would have been on pole. And what does that mean? That means that Charles Leclerc did everything that he could do. Monaco, we know as a Grand Prix, is won or lost on Saturday during qualifying. Oscar Piastri, had he optimised for his circumstance in his sophomore year, would have dropped it on pole. Charles Leclerc then is to be rated, is to be commended for outperforming that car and putting it on pole in a place that it potentially should not have been. All of his best sectors he combined on that pole lap. And for that, I've got to tip my hat to Charles Leclerc. Got to apologise ever so slightly, right? No longer can I call this chap modern day journalism unless he continues to make his cheeky and forced errors. But I digress. Let's talk about Carlos Sainz Jr. because the rumour post-Monaco is that he's in serious talks with Williams. They had a meeting, didn't they? Carlos Sainz Sr., Carlos Sainz's cousin and manager, with James Vowles and some very senior people at Williams. The rumour is that Audi is no longer the option for Carlos Sainz Jr. anymore, courtesy of the fact that some of the head honchos at Audi aren't racing people. The oldest story in F1 history is that success is a function of your IP. the uppermost ability of the people that you have in situ at a team. And if they are not racing minds, as an example, if they are finance people, as Adrian Newey talks about in his book, How to Build a Car, then you will go barking up the wrong tree. Some say that's Mercedes' issue, that too many finance bods are in the room and not enough racing minds. Carlos Sainz, therefore, doesn't want to waste away the next couple of years of his career starting up and assisting with a junior project in Audi, trying to turn around the ship with too many finance minds in the room, as is rumoured. Therefore, as far as Carlos Sainz's next move, if Williams can match the circa $15 million being offered to him by the startup Audi project, then Williams is potentially the most likely destination for one Carlos Sainz Jr. That is chaos. Logan Sargeant will be no more. We've heard him basically admit around Monaco that that's all I had, chaps. Like I didn't have any more. And that's a confession, right? That the level of F1 is here. Logan's level, sadly though, is here. F1 is a shark's tank. Look how many young, talented drivers are on the sidelines. We've seen F2 by now. Andrea Kimi Antonelli, Ali Behrman, Felipe Drugovich, Teo Porcher, Victor Martin. There are loads of them. Logan, it's time to up the ante or vacate. Defend or vacate, right? Show and prove. Because at this stage, there are far too many young drivers waiting in the wings whose careers, for want of a better turn of phrase, whilst you sit in that Williams underperforming, are a wasting. That's sad. No, that's tragic even. Only 20 F1 drivers in the world, so therefore you have to show and prove. As sad and as ruthless as it may sound, my saying this is the truth, right? This is the one truism that runs through all of F1, has run through F1 throughout F1 history. Perform the car, outperform it, perform to the level of your teammates, senior or junior, or vacate the seat. And that, F1 word on the curb is saying, is exactly what's going to happen. Andrea Kimi Antonelli is waiting in the wings. Toto Wolff, Toto the boy who cried wolf, is desperate for Kimi Antonelli to get some time in an F1 car as soon as possible. His grand plan is to raise Kimi Antonelli in the image of Max Verstappen, if of course he can't sign Max Verstappen himself. In losing his key asset, Toto Wolff realises that he has a gap to plug, a star and story gap, a lap time gap. Kimi Antonelli, therefore, when he turns 18, might be the replacement short term for Logan Sargeant, if F1 word on the curb is to be believed. Getting techie this year, getting very techie. Lewis Hamilton, let's talk about Lewis, because he hasn't been fantastic all weekend. And again, speaking to my guy Peter Windsor, the interview will come out on this channel at some point today. Peter assured me, I'm concerned, here's my concern. If you can't beat George Russell in equal machinery, in inverted commas, then when you go over to Ferrari, Charles Leclerc's house, how are you going to beat him in qualifying? If the assumption is that Charles Leclerc, per this weekend's performance, is ostensibly quicker than George Russell of Kings Lynn, Norfolk, how does my driver Lewis propose to solve for that speed Rubik's Cube? It is concerning that Lewis, at the ripe old age of 39, soon to be 40 years old, is lacking in pace. If Lewis is past his prime and in the latter stages of his career, surely then the first thing to go is pace in absolute terms, is it not? If past is prologue. Looking at the likes of Vettel, not long retired, Kimi Raikkonen too, as they got older, absolute terms pace in quali was the first thing to fade away, surely. Not saying that this is what's happening to Lewis necessarily. I can't prove this beyond reasonable doubt, not just yet. But there is something going on. If Lewis is to be believed, each and every single time a mic was put in front of that champ's face this weekend, he was talking, insinuating of sabotage. The soundbite that he gave to Natalie Pinkham of Sky Sports F1 went something like this. I won't be able to out-qualify George Russell at any stage this season. Well, what does that mean, Lewis Hamilton? What does that mean, genuinely? Non-rhetorical question. And why, probably more importantly? Are you saying that George will get all the upgrades? Well, mate, you could have, we know already, motorsport.com, Jenson Button has said that you agreed to give George Russell that front wing. So what is it then? What am I missing? What is Sir Lewis Carl Davidson trying to tell us in earnest? Is he talking about sabotage? And more to the point, is this something that you wouldn't expect from Mercedes in the year when Lewis Hamilton is doing his final tour as a driver from Brackley and Brixworth? Isn't this just the oldest story in F1 history? When a driver's leaving, you put them on gardening leave in effect. Prioritise the other driver that's going to be continuing as an asset for the team. In this case, George Russell. I don't know. The Lewis Hamilton fan in me wants to react in earnest and go scorched earth at Mercedes, as I did 48 hours ago. It feels unfair, but is this just not the Shark's tank that is F1? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Let's talk about Max Verstappen, because he said some things and Ted Kravitz has said some things, right? Is Max Verstappen, as at May 2024, exposed Leroy? Oh, Leroy, the interview's techie. It's a short one, but it is techie. Coming out later today, you'll enjoy it. Visual. I mean, what? Oh my God, I'm not even going to get to Esteban Ocon. In fact, let's do Ocon before we do Max Verstappen. Go on then. Ocon was reckless this weekend just past. Not good enough from Esteban Ocon. And again, it's not like Alpine are plain sailing, right? This is a time of tumult for them. They're improving, yes, or at least they've improved between now and the start of the season. However, every point counts for Alpine. Word on the F1 curb is that potentially Flavio Briatore could come in as the team principal and shake things up. Also, word on the curb is that Alpine are potentially going to come out of the engine making market. It's a lot of money, isn't it, cost-wise, to make an engine? And if you don't do it well, the marketing impact is downside only. Zero upside, per my guy Joe Sayward. So what do they do then now, Alpine? How do they solve for the Rubik's Cube? What happened to the 100-day plan? It's nonsense. They are struggling, and what they can't afford is for reckless Esteban Ocon to cost them potentially points across both of their drivers. That's chaos. Can't be doing that at Monaco. And we know Monaco is techie to pass around. It's a difficult track. Those cars have outsized that Monte Carlo circuit. Carlos Sainz spoke to this at the post-race press conference, saying something to this effect. We know at Monaco that if you try to overtake, that the most likely outcome is either you touch the defender or both of you DNF. And that's a broader problem with not just F1 but Monte Carlo. But Esteban Ocon in real time needs to act accordingly. Can't put one up the inside, not a speculative one at least, up the inside of your teammate Pierre Gasly at Monaco. Your home Grand Prix, isn't it? It makes no difference. Hence why Bruno Famin was having conversations with Jack Doohan. There will be ramifications. The team principal, CEO of Alpine, said to French media, didn't he? What does that look like? Does he bench Esteban Ocon for the Montreal Grand Prix? Potentially. Does this mean that Esteban Ocon has potentially put himself on the back burner for multi-year deals with Alpine going forward? Potentially. Does he need to look for pastures anew at Mercedes? Potentially. We don't know. But are Mercedes or any other team going to pick up Esteban Ocon after that performance? Not me. Why would I do that? That dude, as brilliant as a driver as he is on his day when he's had his Weetabix, why would I want him? He's a liability at his worst. Not just for himself, but the bloody team. How many incidents has he had down the years like that with his teammate? For Pete's sake, no, thank you. If I'm a team principal and you're pitching the suggestion that I might want to hire Esteban Ocon, I'm looking at you with a side eye. What are you talking about, mate? Go on, let's talk about Max being vulnerable. Because when I say Max is exposed, listen, uncharacteristic mistake from the chap in qualifying, which was notable. I, for one, assumed that ominous Max Verstappen, spiteful Mr. Verstappen was going to drop it on pole yet again. I was convinced. I've got to eat some humble pie in that sense. And that's proof positive that my crystal ball is just as murky as the next person's. Nobody bats 1,000. Yeah? However, there's a broader conversation to be had. A broader F1 conversation, no, Leroy. What happens next for Red Bull? Because Max, across the Monaco Grand Prix weekend, didn't stop talking about the foibles of that design philosophy. You would think that he was driving a W15, not an RB20, from his tone. Each and every single time. I've had to take some screenshots here because I'm astounded at the poisonous level of his tone. Chaos is what Max Verstappen is spewing out there, talking about how, particularly around not the next Grand Prix at Montreal, saying that our problems will not go away. That's what Max Verstappen said. Curbing is the issue. Curb riding, indeed. Because that's what he wants to be able to do. That's what the Ferrari does so well. He cannot do that in that Red Bull car. Because again, we've talked a gazillion times now, but for the avoidance of doubt, anti-dive and anti-squat is the Adrian Newey genius embedded within that RB20 car. Those two things, and again, the point of having those two things is to make the platform, the chassis of the RB20 as stable as possible. By doing that, you ensure that drivability is optimized. That gives Max Verstappen a stable platform using which he can exploit the car to 10/10. That's why you see a Suzuka qualifying session. And that's why you see a Sector 3 at Monaco, because it's predictable. It's understandable. Max Verstappen has a car that's on the nose and he can wring its neck. That is all a function of Adrian Newey's design philosophy. Stable platform, anti-dive, anti-squat, and again you set it up using the aero map, the suspension stiffness and ride height as close to the track floor as possible. But that necessitates, and again, that makes it difficult even to travel around these undulating tracks, right? Please see Singapore. You remember last year when they struggled to set it up and that ultimately culminated in Carlos Sainz's victory around that track. Monaco's similar. They can't ride curbs and they can't ride stiff and low. Monaco's doing one of these each and every single time. It's a Rubik's Cube that's very difficult to solve for as a track, right? Undulating, contoured, ergo it does not suit Max Verstappen and Adrian Newey's RB20. The problem for Max Verstappen and the broader F1 conversation that we're having now is this problem going to flow through to other tracks? Max Verstappen thinks so. Montreal Grand Prix necessitates that the drivers ride curbs, straight line these chicanes, as an example, Wall of Champions. The ensuing curves necessitate that you ride these curves if indeed you are looking to optimize for track time. So what does Max Verstappen do now? Is this the convergence that we've been dying for? Finally, by happenstance, has F1's competitive landscape started to level out in a penultimate year of these regulations? Charles Leclerc is 31 points adrift of Max Verstappen. They are converging. I don't even think Ferrari are the best of the rest just yet. Again, you heard me talk earlier about the qualifying time that Oscar Piastri potentially could have put it on pole had he done the best sectors all in one lap. Leroy, Wall of Champions is going to say hello by the sounds of it. Well, he can't even curb. Leroy is the point. Visual, like the street. You're a legend, Visual. Mate, I think you need yourself a moderator spanner at this stage. But he can't even ride the curbs, is what Max Verstappen's saying. If he's to be believed, he can't straight line for these chicanes, and automatically that puts him on the back foot, right? That's a handicap as versus Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz's SF24, which is God tier at curb riding. That's why all of a sudden Charles Leclerc is loving life. He can't help but curb ride. You remember his mistake at Imola a couple of years ago? What was that but if not for a cheeky curb ride. He got overly enthusiastic, didn't he, with the amount of curb that he was taking. Now, though, that he has this platform and the suspension that can be soft enough, he and Carlos Sainz are absolutely loving life. Leclerc more so than Carlos Sainz. So what now is the question? Non-rhetorical one for you guys in the chat. Are we going to see the likes of McLaren continue to converge upon Red Bull's RB20? Because if you're going to diatribe and dissect McLaren's performance, this was the track around which they were supposed to be weakest, right? Miami, they said those upgrades were going to work, but not as well or optimized as well as for the tracks to come. Monaco's out the way now. Montreal Grand Prix, the Canadian Grand Prix is next. Anticipate McLaren to be absolutely SH1T hot around there. It suits them more than does Monaco, and they were the fastest car at Monte Carlo. You guys tell me what that says. I think that means that we're going to get a very interesting season. I'm not sure just yet. I'm not going to go out on a limb. Wind your neck back in, Cameron. I'm not saying that anybody's going to beat Max Verstappen in that RB20. But do we need for him to be beat? I don't think so. I think we just want to see Max under pressure. And not under pressure by courtesy of allegations of Christian Horner. Pressure from the other 19 on track. Mention no names, Carlos Sainz Jr. Mention no names, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Lewis Hamilton, George Russell of Kingsley and Norfolk. Those are the bods that we want to see race Max Verstappen. Bring the best out of the fella. That's all. Is that too much to ask for as an F1 fan in May of 2024? You see, I don't think it is. Because again, F1 at its best is stakes, it's acrimony, it's friction, it's the symbiosis of man and machine, it's risk, it is life and death. It has always been. The synopsis of F1 is that it is all of the aforementioned when it's at its best. It's emotion. It has to be evocative. And sadly, that's what we did not get at the Monaco Grand Prix. But the chances are the most likely outcome is that going forward over the next couple Grand Prix, that's all we're going to get, courtesy of Max Verstappen's battles with an onrushing, a charging McLaren in the hands of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. Oh, the humanity. But I digress.